Story 1. The gun game. The loud bang on her front door jolted Clara from her daydream. This was it, after all the careful planning and struggling. She to survive. The end would come now. 9 blocks up in room 934, the now abandoned Marriott. She started to cry, not for herself, but for her little 3-year-old son, Jeremy. He was the world to her, and she couldn't bear to think of his short life ended, not like this. Opened the door. She recognized the voice of her live-in boyfriend of for years, Jerome. Quickly as, lipping off the guard chain, she opened the door and let him in. I don't have much time. The boys are going to pick out what's left of the path mark, and I want to be first in line. He suddenly stopped. Damn, baby, you smell good. What is that? It's called Lovely by Sarah Jessica Parker, she said simply. I found it next to the minibar, only the B. Iced tea. Right, yeah, he said as he left to backpacks next to the door and turned to leave. I'll be back soon. Keep the door locked. Okay. Jerome was a survivor. While everyone else was scrounging for supplies downtown, he had had the bright idea to take his little family to the local Mary to wait it all out. No one is coming for us. They've given up on the major cities. He had said simply the plan was to just let everyone kill each other while they live the high life stories up in the now abandoned hotel. It had worked. Most of what was left of humanity and the creatures they became had pretty much wiped each other out. Not that it hadn't been a tough few months. The power was now out and they were down to canned goods. But they were still alive. Clara dragged the 2 bags to the kitchen area and pulled out the dented cans. From the bedroom, she heard Jeremy waking up. A few minutes later, he came into the main living area. Mommy, look, I've got a gun shooter. His excited eyes locked onto hers and she sighed. He was holding some kind of plastic handle. He had obviously broken off one of the cabinets. He pointed it at her. Bang, bang, bang. It reminded her of the awful gang violence just a week prior. Both Jerome's crew and some Asian gang had had a disagreement over who owned what's left of a number of grocery stores that had ended with a few of their good friends dead. She didn't show it. Let me see, honey, she said, holding her hand out. He turned and ran into the bedroom. That was the annoying thing about the age. They never did what you asked. She quickly ran after him and pulled it out of his hand. She was now extremely careful not to let him have anything he could hurt himself with. It was safe enough. Other than the next 2 hours of constant noise, there was no harm in letting him run around with it. Mommy, can we play that gun game again? Mommy, look at me. Mommy, can we play that gun shooter game again? Mommy, I want to play the gun game. Mommy, yes, we can play that game again. She hated that game. Every time she played it, it reminded her of the last couple of months and the last hours of the city's death. Both sides had come out of hiding and shot it out. It was unsettling enough to be on the outskirts of a war zone. What made it absolutely unbearable was knowing that one side of the conflict was composed of the walking dead. They had made it as far as a hotel. Jerome and his gang, as well as some of the other groups, had held them off just over by 5th Street, well within view of the 9th floor Marriott. They had been content to put bullets into their enemies and move on. Conversely, when one of those things shot a human, they usually ended up carrying them off and eating them. Humans were fighting for survival. They were hunting for food. She had seen it firsthand. A couple of Asian thugs had been cautiously scouting Betway and Fifth and Broadway, and the enemy descended upon them with a plan that was both aggressive and cunning. These were not the meandering, shuffling corpses you saw in the movies. The enemy was very much intelligent, and they were still out there. She had only run into one of them once. Jerome had given her a handgun off of a dead police officer and told her, just point and squeeze. To be honest, he had taken care of things so well she didn't think she'd actually have to do any shooting herself. But a day ago in the hotel, one of them had slipped by the patrols and gotten in the building. She and Jeremy had gone to get ice. The power had still been working then. When she heard the slightest shuffle of feet around the corner, she knew where it was and what it was. Ted, she could smell the rotting flesh. Something inside her, some force of survival, helped her know exactly what to do. The primal, maternal instinct within her guided her against this awful predator. Heart acing, she moved with her son past the corridor where she knew it lurked. She even continued the casual small talk with her little boy, slowly slipping her hand into her pocket where the .45 was located. She knew that once she and Jeremy were past the corridor, the thing would slip out of its hiding place and follow them, hoping for a clear shot. Once past the corner, she turned on her heel, pulled out the gun, rounded the corner, and just started firing. She was right. Not only had the thing come out of hiding, but it had moved at a quick pace too. In the 2 seconds it took her to spin on her heel and draw her weapon, the thing was already within reaching distance. For shots to the body and to the head that was still advancing upon her, she could still remember the expression of surprise and fear on its face just before its entire head popped, the gray matter spilling everywhere behind it. She had expected to see some expression of an undead creature, Histed in hatred and loathing. The terrifying thing was that aside from the rotten smell and blackened appendages, its face still looked human. Not waiting to see if there were more of them, she grabbed her son and bolted for room 934. She frantically reached into her pocket for the hotel room key card, cutting her hand on the various survival items in her pocket. She swiped it over and over on the door key, desperate for the green signal that would indicate the lock would give. Finally it did, and she grabbed her son again and shoved him inside. Rather than be traumatized by the whole event, Jeremy's little mind instead translated it into a game, the gun-shooter game. His 3-year-old psyche interpreted the event as some elaborate fantasy, one that he wanted to repeat. It was odd the way that a child's mind translated near death. Now Clara had to relive the entire incident over and over again in order to maintain the facade that the two of them had not escaped certain death just yesterday. Bang, bang, I got you, Mommy, in the head. I shot you, you're dead, Mommy. Fall down. Fall down. She had humored him enough, and she couldn't take the reality of the previous day's horror any more. I don't want to play any more, sweetie. Go eat your dinner. She was surprised when he obeyed, sitting at the kitchen tab. She watched as Jeremy ate the food she had made for him. Since yesterday, she had had trouble eating. She would put food in her mouth, Think about the gray pieces of brain splattered all over the adjacent tea corridor and vomit. But whatever it was about, watching her son gobble up the last pieces of canned squash and mashed carrots seemed to finally convince her appetite to surface. In fact, she was really hungry. She leaned in towards him to kiss him on the cheek, her maternal instincts kicking in again despite the nausea. Sometimes a mother just has to reach over, grab her child closer, and kiss him over and over, especially considering recent events. She nuzzled her lips against his cute baby fat cheeks and rubbed her nose into him. Something was wrong. She felt an unusual, insatiable desire to bite his flesh. His soft, supple baby fat called out to her aching stomach and demanded union. She stood up quickly. "No," she whispered. "Please, God, no." She ripped off the bandages and looked down at her wounded hand. The blood vessels next to the blackened incision had ever so slightly blackened up her vein like a mild case of tetanus. What had she cut her hand on again? Jeremy sat next to the kitchen table, mindlessly muttering the gibberish of a 3-year-old and coloring outside the lines of his favorite dinosaur book. She watched him for a moment, knowing that if she did not act quickly, her maternal instincts would be overcome by her insatiable hunger. Of course, she could just give in. If whatever was inside her hand did tea. Oh, Jeremy, what it had done to her. Her indecision was broken by her son's innocent inquiry. "Mommy, let's play the gun game again." "Okay, sweetie." Story 2. Fool. In town, as children, we often get ourselves into trouble by not listening to our parents or sneaking into places we shouldn't be. This is Nicole's story. September 22nd, 1988. Ever since she was a little girl, 14-year-old Nicole had a fascination of exploring unfamiliar places. For this expedition, she wanted to explore a patch of forest she recently discovered near her house. She brought along a flashlight in case there were any dark places worthy of investigation. The forest was about 2 blocks down her street. A small dirt path wended through it, and there was still plenty of daylight to see everything, and Nicole was giddy with anticipation of what lay ahead. As she walked along the main path, separate trails split off into different directions. "Well, I'll be back another time," Nicole said to herself. "Eventually, I'll explore every one of these paths to see where they lead to." After wandering aimlessly for a while, she found herself in a dark, shady grove. Nothing more than a few trees surrounded her. Nicole noticed something hidden among a tangled mass of branches. She whipped out her flashlight and shined it on the object. What she saw surprised her. A sign with the words "Fun Town" written in bright red letters pointed towards a small passage among the trees. Without a moment to lose, she ran down the path in a hurry to see what wonders were in store at Fool. In town, she arrived in a large, open field blanketed with fog. Her heart dropped when she saw the gates to Funtown locked. Funtown was closed, and looked like it had been closed for years. Nicole looked towards the carnival and desperately wished to see what it was like inside. It was 6:30, and the sun was beginning to set. Nicole walked away in great disappointment. Before she got past the trees, she heard a horrible screeching sound behind her. She turned around to find that the gates to Funtown had mysteriously opened by themselves, After checking to make sure no one was watching, she sprinted towards the gates and slipped past them. Nicole found herself surrounded by old tents full of holes, rides threatening to fall apart, 10 food booths that smelled of rot and deterioration. Fun Town was now Ghost Town. She walked around the carnival and saw all sorts of wonderful things gone to ruins. Among these was a fun house with its once brilliant colors now faded and peeling, the infrastructure falling apart, one rotten board at a time. She walked around the grounds, peeking into tents, only to find boxes filled with junk and other trivial things, all smelling of mildew. Eventually, she came across an old sideshow tent with vintage freak posters lining the outside of it. One featured the 600-pound woman. Another starred the man with half a body. As Nicole walked past the posters, she noticed a funhouse mirror on the end. It was caked in mud and other questionable substances. She looked down and saw a small plaque just below. The mirror, it read, "A true abomination of God." When she looked back up, her reflection was hellish. She saw herself as a living corpse with her eyes sunken into her head, skin crawling, with maggots and bones exposed. She shrieked and looked away from the mirror. Nicole shook it off and just assumed it was a prop used in a haunted house. She continued to explore the grounds for some time. It made her feel sad seeing all the beautifully painted buildings and rides all gone to waste. At one time, Funtown must have been an amazing place for children of all ages. She wished she could have experienced it during its glory days. Brown and yellow leaves covered the ground as autumn settled in. Nicole loved the crunching sound they made as she stepped on them. After passing through a midway of empty, decomposing carnival game booths, she found a red barn with the words "Petting Zoo" written above the door. She knew that no animals would be inside, but she decided to look inside anyway. Nothing was out of the ordinary. In the barn, however, the smell was almost too much to bear. Rotting hay and feces was not a good combination. It was so dark inside that Nicole had to get out the flashlight to take a look around. It was very quiet inside the barn. Suddenly, Nicole heard something rustling in the corner behind metal bars. She pointed her flashlight to see what it was. Her heart started racing when she saw a large black figure hobbling towards her. It was a horse with its ankles in iron shackles. The poor thing was in very bad shape. It was blind in both eyes, and its back was U-shaped from so many people riding it. Bleeding whip slashes covered the horse's body, and it looked like it hadn't eaten in weeks. Near the horse's street, all was a box of feed. Nicole felt that feeding the horse the old food would not be a good idea, but it was all that was available. She grabbed a handful and held it up to the horse in the hopes that it'd see. "I'll smell it." It slowly walked towards her and nibbled on it until it was all gone. As Nicole got another handful, the horse began dry heaving. She backed away from it, her heart pounding in her chest. It gave a final heave and spewed vomit all over the floor. Nicole could feel the warm vomit soaking through her shoes. When she looked down, she found herself standing in a puddle of blood. The horse's knees gave in, and it collapsed in a heap. She screamed in absolute terror and ran towards the front gate, refusing to look back. When she made it to the front, she had to stop and see, catch her breath, Beads of sweat poured down her face as she tried to recover from the trauma. It was now 8 o'clock and almost too dark to see. Nicole turned on her flashlight and started heading out. She had had enough of Funtown. Somebody, please help me. The voice of a little girl in distress suddenly rang out. It's just a trick, Nicole thought to herself. She walked past the gates. A little further, the girl's screams only grew louder. What if there really is a girl in danger? Maybe she sneaked in after I did. What should I do? A strong sense of guilt made her turn around. I can't just leave an innocent girl trapped in this terrible place. I have to help her. She went back into Funtown to find where the voice was coming from. Nicole heard the cries coming from an old mirror maze near the front gate. Bits and pieces of broken glass scattered the ground. Despite her angst, Nicole forced herself to go inside and rescue the poor girl. Without a moment to waste, she turned on her flashlight and started down the hall of mirrors. As she made her way deeper into the maze, it got very dark. Most of the mirrors were either cracked or shattered. However, the mirrors towards the back were in perfect condition, as if no one had ever made it to the end. She was getting close to the girl's screams. As she turned the next corner, she found hers. LF in a round room with mirrors surrounding her on all sides. The cries had stopped. She looked all around the room to try and find the girl. There was no sign of her anywhere. Something was not right. The room was unnaturally cold. Nicole could see her breath. She was frightened and ready to go home. Just as she was about to leave, she made a grim discovery. The hall leading to the row home was gone. She was trapped. Nicole punched one of the mirrors trying to escape. The glass broke, leaving her with nothing but lacerations on her hand for her efforts. She flashed her light on the mirror and screamed. Blood was seeping through the cracks in the mirror. The maze was alive. Nicole started to panic. Hoping somebody was nearby, she started calling for help. Help me, help me. She got a response back. Help me, help me. The voice calling back was hers. There was a hint of malice. She looked into the mirrors and froze. All of her reflections smiled back at her. Help me, help me. The reflections shrieked with laughter. Help me, help me. The maze was a monster, mocking her cries for help with no other options. She sat down against one of the mirrors, buried her head in her arms, and cried. The mirrors continued taunting and laughing at her. Suddenly, the mirror Nicole was sitting against felt very warm and wet, like the inside of a person's mouth. She could feel the ground move beneath her. The mirrors were closing in on her. If she didn't act fast, she would be eaten alive. She tried to break another mirror, but her hands were hurt too badly to continue. As she waited to accept her fate, the batteries in her flashlight died, leaving her in complete darkness. Later that night, Nicole's parents called the police. Frantic about their daughter's disappearance, a search party was organized to try and find Nicole in the woods. After hours of searching, one of the police officers found a sig in that reed Funtown among tangled branches. When he followed the direction the sign was pointing, he came to a large, open field. Nothing was there. Story 3, eidetic. Before I begin, let me explain what is happening to me. The technical term for what I am is called an eidetic. You've probably heard of people with photographic memories. Well, that's what it is, except eidetics, are not limited by the visual sense in what they remember. While each case varies in their specific capabilities, feelings of sound, taste, smell, and touch can also be vividly recalled at any time. Some eidetics are also known to have the ability to see what they are thinking. This is the category that I belong in. I have to admit, this ability does have its perks. School is a breeze because I can see my notes next to every exam that I take. I'm able to bring up happy memories that I've had with friends and family to help brighten their day. Whenever I get bored, I can read books that I've read or watch TV shows that I've watched in my head. Seems cool, right? At least that's what people tell me. I wish they were right. What they don't know is that I would give anything in the world to be rid of this dot. The way that my vision works is that in addition to what my eyes actually see, my brain overlaps whatever I'm thinking of over this, and the result is a combination of the two. Therefore, the effect of my mental vision is limited during the day because my actual vision interferes with it. But whenever I go to bed and the room is totally dark, my mental vision is given free rein of what I see. Now one might ask, why is this so bad? As long as you think of pleasant things, this must be a very relaxing way to go to bed, right? This would imply that you are in complete control of every thought that goes through your head at all times. This, however, is almost never the case. The brain is constantly bombarded with what are called intrusive thoughts. I'm sure you've heard the normal creaks and groans from your house at night, and you think that maybe someone or something is walking around in the dark. Fear swells in you for a few seconds, but after a minute or so of nothing happening, you are able to shrug it off as your imagination and go to sleep. This is an intrusive thought. Though you know there is nothing there, your brain enforces you to think, at least for a moment, that there is, except with me. These intrusive thoughts conjure an image that accompanies the sound. Sounds in the night are always accompanied by some sort person or creature walking around my room or standing there watching me. Obviously, this made growing up hard. I couldn't understand any of this when I was young and just assumed that there were monsters in my room when I went to bed. Many a night my parents would rush into my room after hearing my cries and try to console me, even though their presence never made the image go away. Eventually I could understand that the images weren't real because they were all things that I had seen before, and being able to recognize where they came from had a calming effect. I learned to live with and even anticipate the entities that would appear each night. Until a few months ago, I had just gotten back to my apartment after a long night working at the hospital, and I noticed that my roommate wasn't home. I assumed that he was out at the bars, thought nothing of it, and went inside. As I opened the door to my apartment, the normal darkness greeted me, and my mental vision took over as I walked over to the light switch. Just as I was about to turn on the lights, I saw a man at the end of the hallway looking at me. I could tell that he was just an image, but for the first time he was something that I had no memory of. He was extremely fat and had no clothing except for a small black bolo hat on his balding head. His skin was a light, sickly purplish color and appeared to be peeling across his clearly disease-ridden body. His mouth hung open, revealing a set of gangrenous teeth and pus-laden stump of a tongue. But the thing that stuck out the most was that he had no eyes or even eye sockets. They were replaced with lumps of flesh that seemed to grow from the edges of his hat. My hand hesitated on the light switch, and my fear was temporarily replaced with curiosity. I wanted to see what this man would do if I sat around for a while. He was, after all, just an image that my brain had conjured up. So I took a seat on my couch and observed quietly. After a few minutes he started to move. Like all of my other hallucinations, his actions made no noise in the real world, and he just silently shuffled around my apartment. He didn't seem to be heading towards me at all, nor did he appear to have any clear destination in mind. I started to lose interest and got up to turn on the lights and get ready for bed. Then he spoke. Fear, the likes of which I have never known, resonated down my entire spine. None of my hallucinations had ever made their own noises, let alone form words. I tried to rationalize that maybe I had heard people talking either from outside my window or perhaps outside my door. But before I even had a chance to validate my claims, he spoke again. She just wanted to see you. Again, his voice was garbled and deep, and he spoke very quietly, but I heard every word. Panic took hold of me, and I bolted for the light switch. As always, the light instantly made the man disappear, and I was left alone in my apartment. Relief washed over me, and I tried to make sense of what had just happened. I knew that the voice had come from the man, but I couldn't figure out how that was even possible. I didn't recognize him from any scary movie I had seen or any picture on the internet, nor could I recall anyone talking like that, no matter what conclusion I came to. I knew that I would see him again when I went to bed. He didn't disappoint. No sooner had I jumped under my covers, he waddled into my room. I tried to distract myself from him by thinking of other things. I resorted to my normal tactic of getting an image of my sister to appear to calm me down. She was always so understanding, even when we were kids, of what happens to me. Her presence made me feel at peace, and I relied on her to get me through some of my more severe episodes. However, her image also seemed to have an effect on him. He immediately stopped his shufflings and seemed to turn to where she was. It is difficult for me to describe what he did next because it makes me question my sanity, but he somehow forced her to fade from my vision. It wasn't possible. I should have been able to keep her in my vision if I thought of her, but for the first time I couldn't. As soon as she faded, he spoke again. You should have been there. She thought about you at the end. A memory was then thrust into my mind. It was of my grandmother. She had been in the hospital for the last few months of her life, and my dad used to take my sister and I to visit her. My grandmother adored us and absolutely loved whenever we came to see her. One time when my dad was going to visit, I told him that I wanted to hang out with my friends instead, and he obliged. That was the last time that my dad went to see her, and she died a few days later. I felt horrible for not going and regretted it for a long time. These feelings of regret and sorrow overwhelmed me, and I suddenly realized the meaning behind the man's words. He was somehow able to project a memory that I didn't want to think about and relive the emotions that I felt during it. He has visited me every night since then. Each time a horrible moment in my life is wrenched from my subconscious, and I endure the sorrow of each event. Each night I am unable to cope with the overwhelming surge of emotions, and what little sleep I get is plagued by nightmares of these memories. I see no end in sight and am at my wit's end. I often think of the nature of heaven and hell, and whether or no there is a God. Originally, I was inclined to believe that there couldn't exist a God that would allow this kind of torment to be inflicted on a person who, seemingly, did nothing to deserve it. Oh, Weaver, I cannot think of a more terrifying version of hell than this, to be forced to relive and reconsider each bad decision in one's life as the ultimate and most effective method to push a soul to its breaking point. I can see only one way to escape this. If my family reads this, just know that I love you all and I'm sorry for any pain that I caused. Hopefully you will understand. Store Y4 South Wing. I was desperately broke. I suppose that was why I decided to suck up my pride and apply for a job at the Hindlewood Mansion. They were always in need of housekeepers at that big old place. In high school, a few of my friends had worked there, but never lasted more than a week before quitting. They all said it was because of the way the old man treated them, but the way they acted. And we rolled past that house in our beat-up cars, told me. Otherwise, something was just weird about that place. My appointment for a housekeeping interview was at 9 o'clock at night, a strange me. But I had heard that old man Hindlewood hated company, and we were only to clean house at night when he was sleeping. I did not really mind. My nights were normally pretty uneventful. The small town I lived in hardly had any nightlife, and the only gatherings the younger people had were drinking in the cornfields or hanging out at the local gas station. I preferred to stay home and read. The interview was conducted by the lead housekeeper, a woman who looked a little too old to still be working. She was small and frail, very sweet, but a little strange. The questions she asked seemed a little irrelevant to the job. She mostly wanted to know if I was afraid of the dark, since the old man could not sleep with the slightest light. I did not really understand how in such a huge place one light could bother him. Even at the other end of the house, we were permitted candles and a flashlight, not exactly ideal for dusting the small nooks and crannies of the old place. Despite the irrationality of it all, I obliged to her request for lack of light. I was never afraid of the dark. Mrs. Livingston also requested that I never visited the southernmost wing of the house where the old man slept, because she deals with that area herself. Hindlewood did not like strangers, and would likely fire me on the spot if he so much as saw evidence that anyone was in his wing. I suppose I answered all of the odd questions correctly, because I was hired on the spot. I was to work that night, and began immediately after getting my uniform from maid's quarters. She walked me to the room with the cleaning equipment near the kitchen, told me to work the northern wing for the night, the same wing which harbored the maid's quarters, reminded me again not to enter the south wing, and said goodbye for the night. She was to return at dawn, where my session would end and hers would begin. I changed and began performing the duties explained to me, mostly dusting an array of antiques. I was about halfway through my shift when I hear a high-pitched whistling, not like a person whistling, more like the wind spiraling through a small window I figured a window must have been left open somewhere, so I followed the nose with my flashlight, checking all the windows as I passed them. It was oddly still out, and my heart began to beat a bit harder as I noted how eerily quiet it was outside. It did not seem windy at all. So what could this sound be? Of course, the nose was coming from the southern wing. I stood at the threshold to the southern hallway, wondering what to do. I did not want to go down there, but could feel a dreadful draft coming from that direction, and was afraid the poor old man could catch pneumonia from the open window. I did not want to be the cause of the old guy's death, even though he had a reputation for being quite the grouch. I'm sure How'll understand, and if not, the worst that could happen is that I get fired, right? I took my first step into the hall, half expecting the old man to come charging out, garnishing his cane like a crazed, dementia-induced madman. But nothing happened. I slowly walked down the hallway, listening. I could still hear the whistling, but nothing else. I came to Hindlewood's doorway and put my ear to the door. Nothing but the whistling, which was clearly coming from the room. The door was nearly closed, yet was open just a crack, and I could see some light coming in from the crevice. It was not artificial light, but a dull blue light, like from the moon. I slowly opened the door, which creaked loudly as the room slowly came into view, with my flashlight pointed at the floor of the dark room in front of me. The room was large and mostly empty, with a very large curtained bed at the center. I could see a lump in the bed with the flashlight, which I assumed was the old man. He looked to be sleeping, but the hairs on the back of my neck told me I was being watched. As I inched towards the bed, I remembered my purpose for entering the window. I looked around at the barren walls, and out of the corner of my eyes I noticed what was above me. The light poured in from a large skylight above me, yet cast in the light was a shadow. It seemed as if a figure of person was highlighted in the floor from above, yet its shape was unnaturally large and twisted. What would have been the head was shaped more like a V, and where its shoulders would be, there were large pointed protrusions. I panicked as I went to turn and look at whatever was standing in the light of the moon. I dropped my flashlight. As I tried to catch it from my tumbling hand, it rolled across the room and under the bed. I watched it fall out of reach and spun around to check the skylight. There was nothing there, and the shadow on the floor was gone. With my heart pounding in my chest, I go on my knees to seek out the flashlight under the bed. I could see it shining out from the darkness. It had rolled underneath, and I crawled in to retrieve it when I noticed that the whistling was gone. I grabbed the flashlight and held it to my chest, trying to calm myself. For a second, I told myself I was probably seeing things. The darkness was beginning to get to me, and I was seeing false shadows. I needed to check on the old man, who was likely sleeping soundly directly above me. I took a deep breath and began to scoot my way towards the edge of the bed. When the whistling started again, I could immediately feel the cool air whirling around the room. I stopped where I was, still underneath the bed, but close to the edge. I peered out, hiding the light of the flashlight in my hands, in the direction of the ceiling with the window. Something was standing there, covered in shadow. I could only see the muddy red gloss of its eyes as it stared at whatever was above. It was then that feet dropped inches away from my face, old, veiny, and wrinkled feet, and so I tucked my head back into the darkness. The feet lifted into the air as if they were floating, and the whistling was then accompanied by largest gust of wind, like the flapping of large wings. Then all was quiet. I stayed in that spot for what must have been 2 hours with my heart pounding in my chest. Was I crazy, or had something taken the old man out of his bed while he slept? My mind raced as I lay there, frozen in fear. It was not until I could see the first indications of sunlight that I was able to summon up enough courage to get out from under the bed and look around the room. The bed was empty, like no one had ever slept in it. The room was tidy, the window closed. I walked to the maid's quarters, feeling numb and bewildered, and waited for Mrs. Livingston. I did not say a word to her. I took especially long to change, as I knew she would be making her way to the south wing. She came back only a few moments later, and as the maid's room was next to the kitchen, I saw her making breakfast. When she saw me, surprised I was still there, she says, "Oh, glad you are here, honey. Mr. Hindlewood worked up quite an appetite last night, and I could use your help. Would you like to stay for breakfast?" I was not quite sure what was on the menu, so I said no thank you and left. I am still not quite sure what I saw that night. At first I thought Hindlewood was taken by some evil creature, but I saw him walking the gardens the next day. Miss Livingston. He looked normal, perhaps even more spry than usual. Now I've been working at the mansion for over 10 years, and somehow the old guy is still alive and looks like he has not aged a single day. Whatever has been going on, I don't really mind because it gives me a job and good pay. All I know is I stay out of the south wing, and I've learned to ignore whatever it is I hear in the night. Story 5. Freak. I work at the mental ward in my city's hospital. It is not like they depict it in the movies. The place is not filled with insane maniacs and serial killers. Most of our patients are rule-based people who are confused or have certain issues. Sure, we get the occasional crazy, but those are more an exception to the rule. Most of them get put straight into the asylums. That is the place that most people think of when they hear about the mental ill or the mental ward. Recently, though, we got a new patient. It is a case of severe abuse, mental fatigue, and confusion. The kid is in his teens and probably about 16 years old. At least that's what is written in his file. At first it seemed pretty clear that he never was at a real school and came from an abusive home. Pretty soon it became apparent that there was more going on. The community he grew up in sounds more like some sort of cult. The biggest problem is that the kid isn't able to describe things well, due to not knowing many words or things. At times I wonder if they were just living in the wilderness. Things get even weirder when we asked him to describe the place he lived at and the people he lived with. He just looked at us when we said the word people, but didn't seem to understand. It seemed he didn't know the word. He said the others were different from him and he was regarded as a freak. After that he said a lot of other things that didn't make much sense. It was a week or so ago when the therapist, Mrs. Conrad, had an idea. Since the kid was able to read and write to a certain extent, she got the idea to let the kid type out the stuff he knows, like a sort of retelling of his past. With the help of the nurses, she was able to slowly teach the kid how to use the keyboard and how text editing worked. It was a whole new world for him, and the first few days he seemed totally absorbed into it, and was happy about every letter he made appear on the screen. At first he just typed out random things, only letters, not even words. After some more talk with Mrs. Conrad, though he understood what he was supposed to be doing, during the first few days he simply typed out what he saw at the hospital, but then he started to tell his story. Honestly, I have no idea what to make of this whole thing, but when I am reading the story he writes, I get goosebumps. I was able to get a copy of the document, and I am going to transcribe it here word by word. Hello, I was told to type out my story for the peoples here. It feels really weird to ask it here all day, but the caretakers said it is good to do. I am a male one. The caretakers told me I must be about 6 and 10 numbers. They explained what the age number is, but it is strange. Back way I come from, we do not have them. We only have names. I lived with many others. We all were different. This word is hard, but the caretaker showed me how to type it. Different. The caretaker said it is because of age. Some are smaller and others are bigger because of it. I am not sure if they are right. We had mothers and fathers, better to say male and female ones, who took care of the ones that were smaller and different and needed help, like me. The caretakers said it was us being young ones. Children, they said. It is a funny word. They say it mean offspring. Another word I don't understand. They explained that it is the ones born from others. I am bad. I am one that does not belong. I am a freak, they said. I was not thrown out or left, but also not treated like others. I had a box I slept in outside. The others slept inside. When it was food, I only got what the others left or not wanted. The caretakers say it is terrible and we're all sad, but it is normal for me. I am a freak and freaks live like that ever since and always would, so I do not ask about the hits, the beating, the pain. It was normal. It was my life, and I only knew that I often hurt and was hungry, but I thought this was right and normal. I was at the place very long and learned speaking and reading like everyone. We had a place to learn it from the elders. I was happy that a freak can learn too. I liked learning. My brain was real, good, not like my body. I was told that a freak cannot have a good brain and was beaten by the rest. It was normal, and I did not know bet. I know it was bad. My body was wrong and different. The others looked not like me and were different. My head and body is weird, and all the things coming out of it are wrong. I did not know why. I got older and learned more and often thinked why I was so different. I wanted to know why I was the only freak. I got hit and said to be happy to be alive. I never asked again, but wanted to know. Still, when it was night I walked. It hurt because my body was weak and weird. The others could do it better. I still did. At night they slept and I was alone. I liked that the walking was nice and being alone was nice and no beating was nice. I was not happy. I was a freak, so it was normal, and I knew. I lived because of the others. My body was too fragile and small and weird and white, not like tear, so I was thankful to them. One night I walked too far. I have a good head and I can think, but sometimes I cannot think like the others. I cannot feel the way and time like they can. So I walked far, way more far than usual. I forgot time because I was thinking. I wondered about other freaks. They said freaks always were treated like me. My brain is good, so I know. there were other freaks before me, so I dreamt about more fracks and walked on and on. Slowly, not like they do, but I still walked off. I tried to get back when it got light, but my body is stupid and brain smart, but different. I got lost and not home. I was alone for a long time. It went dark and light many times. I got scared. I was not beaten, but still missed others. I cannot hunt and eat on my own. My body is dumb, my jaw and teeth and head are weird. I tried to eat like the other do and to get animals, but they got away always. I am no tea like them. I was alone and cry more than before. I walked on, but I was hungry and felt weak. Then during life found a way. The caretaker named it street, I think. I was surprised, but I had learned about it. I was scared since the others said it was dangerous. I walked on it, and it felt weird, not normal. I was scared by fast animals often, so I hid when they were running. I had to sleep at one point because I was so tired and weak. That is when the thing happened. I am so happy. I can't really type the words out, but I am not just happy, it is more. Happy was when I got to eat and was not beaten, but this was different. I saw others, not the others from home, but other freaks. They rode one of the fast animals. It was weird, and I laughed because they ride inside. Oh, I got told it was no animal by the caretaker. It is a car, a machine like the commuter I am riding on. I forgot for a moment because there is so much to learn. Learning is fun. I was really happy when I saw the other freaks, but also very sleepy. I slept for a long time, and when I woke I was at a different place. Not a cave or hut, but a special one. A spittle, I think it is. I am still here. It is the caretaker's home. There are so many here. I am so happy because it is a freak place. I think all the freaks in the world are here. It is so weird. The caretakers are freaks too only. They are different. They are completely white, and they have things around their body that others do not. Maybe they are not freaks like me, but they look like it. The caretaker was here for a long time. We talk a lot. I like that, but my head hurts from learning. I am sleepy, but they said freak is wrong. I do not know what they mean. They wrote down a word for me. I do not know it. I never heard it, but they say it is normal. The word is human. Story 6, corrections. I am glad I found you. Sorry for my disheveled appearance, but I haven't slept well, and when I saw you, I knew I had to talk to you, tell you what happened. Call it ego or hubris, but it is really a burning desire for the truth to be known before it is too late for me, you, and us all. I'm really a fan of your work on the site. Yes, that one. I'm a writer myself. No, not scoping a story. Yes, that site too. Really, listen. I know good Italian place, great pasta. Lines treat you. If you would only hear my tale. It begins with a rather mediocre story, but occasionally in them there rests kernels of truth, like clots in blood. Do not try to look it up on your iPhone. The story was deleted. I'm not sure how it got accepted, considering the strict policy employed by the site, and it was purged by the wiki during one of their bad story purges. Maybe with that new site, for the really bad ones, it'll be brought back. Don't, please. Not that I blame them, and no, it wasn't my story, or else it wouldn't be wrong. I've seen too much. Not at all. It was as bloated as a 3-day-old corpse, riddled with plot holes, plagued by grammar so bad one expected a phone to eventually show up. The story like most bad horror, some good, admittedly was less about its protagonists and more about its monster and the mythology of it. The name of the piece reflects that the bright-smelling friend in the dark woods random words were capitalized, and there were several misspellings, which again brings to question why this drivel was published. But I wander off topic. I won't tell all of the details of the story. The monster matters most. As far as truth and lies go, a depressed, drug-using told, not shown man, who lived in a cottage by the dark woods, was lured one night by a figure of an old friend, long dead, into the woods. It mixes exposition and plot to make a sort of mutagenic, toxic sludge, and considering that its literary conceit is that the writer is recounting soon afterwards and dies mid-word, it makes no sense the vellum of details they toss in like a bag of eyeballs to starving ravens. The true hero of the story is a monster that lives in the woods that somehow has lots of people going into it for no good reason. Daft place to live, daft place to go, me. I can't imagine either going or living in the woods or even the country. I love the city, the sight of concrete, the smell of florid humanity, the viscera of human interaction, the taste even of hot dogs from the vendor crap, yes, but it has its own familiarity. Speaking of that, we're here. Would you like to request the table? I'll pay. Well, this is a nice seat. I like booths, so the idiot went in. He sees the beast. His menace manages to escape despite the power and nature of the smiling friend, making such escape rather unlikely, and rather than do the sensible thing and exit stage left, he goes straight home to the cottage, which is right by the damn woods. He then types up the account without looking any of the facts up, apparently, and yet knowing so much, and dies with a bunch of dots, interrupted another misspelled sentence. Hate the damn story, but, well, I have knowledge that there is so any truth to this smiling friend story, at least as far as the appearance goes, though considering the story I have to tell, he doesn't live in the woods, that's for sure. One moment I would like salad for a start, then some angel hair pasta with chicken, please, water, and whatever my friend here will have. In the story he is described as an ancient monster of likely high intelligence, or at least cunning, though that is described as slapshot as the rest. It knows everything and is a shape-shifting face stealer, capable of imitating the dead and the living without a known true form, but with a form it uses on those it kills usually, and capable of warping time and space, of luring minds to a happy death of great speed and strength. Much of that is true, or at least founded in truth, though most of the weaknesses then enunciated are, from what I've seen, lies. The least worthless parts of the story, though still wrong in some places and badly spelled, are the descriptions of the monster and the fact that they preserve at least some mystery in how it kills. Having seen the being myself, seen its murders not 3 hours ago, I can say it is more impressive and terrifying than these words can express, but, well, the description has merit, so why not? I'll summarize it. Done already. You inhaled it, didn't you? You want dessert? I might get a dessert if you know. Well, all right. Bathroom. Got it. Take your time. I'll just be eating. Waiter. 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 Yes, good. What is tasty here? Oh, then I'll have the blueberry cheesecake. That. was disappointing. Welcome back. Well, and I think the reason what you hear is so detailed is they must have met someone who'd really met it, or at least seen it at a distance. T, as compared to the string of 5-word sentences, the whole thing seemed creepily detailed, harsh, almost not quite well written. The monster had sharp triangular feet, like a spade, color of clay, and no toes at all. The 3 tripod legs were long and thick, black-brown, rotting, covered in muscle and bubbles and pustules of shifting pus or fat, which pulsated in time to I don T no, its heartbeat. Perhaps the 3rd leg was more spindly than the first 2, and if the smiling friend had a gender, one couldn't see it. An equally ripped torso, just as putrid, but covered in sweat, which had, according to the authors, the stench of garbage rolling off of it. Now, I must say it, having been, I will tell the details soon enough, one of the lucky few to have smelled it and lived. I must protest that it really smells like honey and rosewater given off in all its forms, even the human, and capable for a time. It does wear off, I know from personal experience of turning its victims into beings as docile and trusting as a pithed cow. Where its stomach should have been was a hole lined with some sort of strange manner of pulsating gobs of flesh, like the gums of a tooth, matching in color the pus bags that also covered the torso and were black, and it had teeth, hundreds of them, which seemed to grow from the end of long tentacles, each tooth as white as if brushed daily. The arms, 2 of them, were curved without a single straight line and covered in corded muscle, colored a mottled gray and green, except for the ever-present black lumps where the hand should have been. Each arm ended in 11 white tendrils of worm-like flesh, each of which terminated in what seemed like a dagger-sharp bone, or perhaps it was truly metal. I personally thought metal. The writer, from whatever distant echoes of true stories they once heard that inspired this, guessed bone, but I never had the inclination to find out. The friend's face was a flat-faced vertical diamond, as black as pitch, as bumpy and sticky as tar. A huge white smile, far too wide for comfort, and to toothy covered the bottom half of the face, making almost and rounded triangle, contrasting against the blackness where its nose might be. There were only 2 holes of different shapes, and eye on its forehead. It had no hair or a pair of eyes. Well, the story just guesses at the eye color, but I know it. It's a vibrant, lovely, haunting green, like a sick man that won't ever get better, or grass that has tasted blood at twice the human height one has to look up into those eyes or down at those sharp feet. Neither is a particularly good view. Now, would you like to go home with me to finish the talk? Good ice cream on the way. That cheesecake was subpar. That lying waiter that didn't qualify as a dessert at all. Welcome to my home, I know. It felt like only a second ago, and the rest aren't. Well, you spaced out a bit. You have some ice cream on the chin there. That's better. Now, that incident. It happened, about a minute from now. Did you ever wonder why you so readily went with a homeless-looking bum, lost minutes, hours in an eye blink, traveled miles, and didn't know it? Why you were even willing to go with me? Time is simple. So is distance. I am sure you have guessed it by now, but if not, I am called by some idiots the smiling friend. You, my good friend, are here for dessert. But I did promise you a story, and I'm a civilized, city-dwelling monster, and so I keep my word. Forests, bah! How about the story about the editor who helped spread the truth of the nature of his friend, posted the correction to those misspelled lies from someone who is now a corpse before that editor's tragic and mysterious disappearance? Yes, well, it begins when I say to you, I'm glad I found you. Story 7. Doors, I was adopted. I never knew my real mother. Rather, I knew her at one time, but I left her side when I was too little to be able to remember. I loved my adopted family, though. They were so kind to me. I ate well. I lived in a warm and comfortable house, and I got to stay up pretty late. Let me tell you about my family real fast. First, there's my mother. I never called her Mom or anything like that. T called her by her first name, Janice. She didn't mind at all, though I called her that for so long, I don't think she even noticed. Anyhow, she was a very kind woman. I think that she is the one who recommended my adoption in the first place. Sometimes I would lay my head against her in front of the television, and she would tickle my back with her nails. She is one of those Hollywood mothers. Second, there's Dad. His real name was Richard, but he never really liked me much, so I began to refer to him as Dad in a desperate attempt to gain his affection. It didn't work. I think that no matter what I called him, he would never love me as much as his own child. That's understandable, so I really didn't press the matter. The most notable attribute of Dad was his unmoving sternness. He was not afraid to pop his children when they did something wrong. I found that out before I could use the restroom properly. He didn't hesitate to spank me. Well, I'm in line, and it's because of his methods. Lastly is my sister. Little Emily was really young when I was adopted, so we were about the same age, but she was slightly older. I like to think of her as my little sister, though we got along better than any sibling could possibly get along. We would always stay up late together and just talk. Well, she did a lot of the talking. I mostly just listened because I loved her. It was a great setup that we had. We were short on bedrooms, so because I didn't want to sleep in the living room by myself when I was littler, I had a pallet set up or me next to her bed on the floor. This is where I have slept since, but it was cool with me because I enjoyed being with her, and I had always felt pretty protective of my little sis. Everything changed on a horrible Wednesday night. I was at home taking a nap when little Emily opened the front door. The sound of the door opening pulled me to a state of consciousness, and I walked from the room down the hall to the living room. That's when I first remembered it was Wednesday. I was never any good at keeping track of what day it was. Actually, I'll just go ahead and say it. My sense of time was horrible, but nevertheless I knew it was Wednesday because Emily had just come home from her church's youth group gathering. She walked in the front door and hugged me, and then was followed in by Dad and Janice. You have a good nap, Janice said teasingly as she ruffled up my hair. I just shook my head away and snorted in a manner that clearly expressed that I was sing back with her. Don't you snort at your mother like that, said my father gruffly with authority. He shut the door behind him and hung up his coat. I was clearly joking. I growled under my breath, He must not have heard me because I didn't feel him. Smacked me. Emily then proceeded to our room, and I followed. She started telling me about her day. You know, usual teenage girl stuff. But I listened so that she would feel better. After her summary, she suggested watching TV, and I obliged and jumped onto the couch as she was going for the remote. She rolled her eyes at my little brother like him, authority, and scooted me over and sat down. The TV turned on, and we watched it together until the sun went down. Emily was the kind of girl that, instead of watching cartoons and soap operas, would rather watch Discovery and Animal Planet and Natural Geographic. I like those so I didn't mind. Actually, those were the only channels that can hold my attention. So it got late, and Janice walked up behind the sofa. Emily, it's past your bedtime. Turn off the television and go to your room. You too. She pointed at me. Emily turned off the program we were watching grudgingly and stood up. She started down the hallway to our room. As I followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We went into our room, and Emily turned off the light. Just as she did, I caught a flash of movement out of the corner of my eye. It was out the window. But as soon as I redirected my line of sight to where the window was no longer in my peripheral vision, what it was that I thought I saw was gone, I still remained alert. For my sister's sake, I laid there in the darkness, with nothing but the thin ray of light from the street lamp outside to illuminate the room. It wasn't much. Time and time again I could have sworn that I heard subtle sounds just out the window. A twig break, leaves crunching, clothes jostling, and all the while I could smell a faint stench of sweat and blood. I kept my eyes open most of the night. The sounds outside subsided, and the smell left my nose. I began to feel at ease. My eyelids closed. Not long after that I heard a very loud crash on the other side of the house. I was up in an instant. There's someone in the house. I barked with extreme adrenaline coursing through me. Wake up. I shrilly pleaded with Emily. She did, and as soon as I saw her sit up I ran to my parents' room. Dad was dead. His neck was splayed open and gaping as blood spilled out of it. Off the bed and onto the floor, I saw that the master bathroom's door was closed, and just before high tea on the outside was a man. I don't feel comfortable calling it that. He was very large and rugged. He turned around and saw me, and that's when I saw him accurately for the first time. I won't forget it. His eyes were large and beady and trapped with lust. He was styling a beard that was badly unkempt with blood dripping off. His clothes were dirty and his face was cold. Just then I noticed the same horrid smell of sweat and blood from earlier, but this time it was overwhelming. He saw me and grinned. D with a set of crooked yellow teeth that smiled through me off. I thought that I was going to die, but then he turned back to the bathroom door completely unperturbed by my presence. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I just yelled and cried. I watched as he shouldered through door that was Mom's only protection. I watched as he raised the large razor that he was carrying, but had obviously neglected to use properly. I watched as he sliced her open and tore her to shreds. I then heard something. The last thing that I wanted to hear, it was Emily's scream. Coming from behind me, the large monstrosity looked up from my butchered mother and stared at my little sister. I was distraught. He stood up and quickly started walking toward us. My sis turned and ran, and I was at a loss when he bypassed me and went straight after her. Why was she still in the house? Had she not assessed the situation and run? Apparently not. And now she was dead and I was alone. I ran after them both. I expected the man to kill her as he had the rest of my family, but I was sadly mistaken. He grabbed her by the arm and jerked her as a way to make clear that he was in control. He agged her through the house. I was making all the noise I could now, hoping and praying that someone would come to my aid. He mustn't take her, not her. As he passed me, I backed against the wall, and whimpered with terror. Why? He didn't respond except by putting his free hand on my head. Emily screamed in the other hand, saying, "Good boy." He gave another crooked grin and a very cold, unnatural laugh. I followed him to the door where he dragged my helpless sister after him. He opened it, pulled her out, and slammed it shut behind him. I am now sitting in the house with my mutilated adopted parents, shivering and whimpering with dismay. He's out there with her, doing who knows what to her, and I can't do anything. I would if I could, but I can't. I would chase he after them in a heartbeat. But I can't. I sit here, looking at the front door. I look down at my paws. If only I could open doors.